Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the podcast dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. If you're new to me, full expression is my jam. Some words people have used to describe me range from speaker, trainer, coach, healer, writer, spiritual advisor, teacher, podcaster, and someone even called me their soul Sherpa once. I'm less concerned with titles or labels and more interested in results, change, and creating a world we want to, can, and are proud to live in. A kinder, gentler, more curious, collaborative, reverent world where people respect each other's backgrounds, experiences, and truths. They trust in themselves, in life, and recognize that we need each other. And they know how to cultivate healthy relationships to true power, not the very unhealthy kind of power our current culture is predicated upon. Speaking of our culture, there's a lot of noise and ignorance in our current culture, and this show aims to cut through that by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. We post a new interview every Monday, and if you want to keep up with the show notes and quotes from our guests, you can follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto. You can expect a wide range of topics when you tune into this show. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, sex, love, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, activism, advocacy, and much more. A few disclaimers. No episode of the show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. If you love what you hear and find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode, subscribe to the show, and leave us a rating and review wherever you listen in from. Thank you so much for being here with me. Here we go. Hello, everybody. This is episode number 284 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto. It is also episode number 4 in the Journey into the Wild Soul series. This is a 6-week series that we're doing to wrap up 2018. This is about reflecting on the year and perhaps years previous so that we can leave the past in the past as we transition into a new year. As well, it's about inviting you to consider if how you've been going about your growth, healing, and transformation is really effective, or if it's more performative, obligatory, inefficient, ineffective, or just a distraction. This is about real deal empowerment, and to be clear, I'm not out here trying to empower you because I can't do that for you, but I am here to help you empower yourself. So that's what we're talking about during this 6-week series, and we're approaching it from different angles with the intention of helping you connect to the love and truth inside of you. This is about taking you on an adventure of your inner world to help you have better outer world experiences in 2019 and beyond. So if you're tuning in now for the first time and you're landing here on episode 4, it's totally fine. These episodes are designed so that they could be standalone. But as well, there's certainly some benefit to going back and listening from the beginning as well to episodes number 1, 2, and 3. And I will reference some of those elements during this episode, but you'll be able to piece it together either way. So the other thing is that this series also coincides with enrollment for my year-long Women's Circle, Power 2019, which starts on January 3rd. It's a circle for expansion, for love, for good, and for healing. And there are currently 2 really cool bonuses available when you enroll before December 15th. The first is monthly new moon circles. These are great for tuning in with the lunar cycle, which as a woman mimics a lot of the cycles we experience in our lives as well. Honoring the new moon each month is a great way to have some time to set intentions so that you could focus your energy, your action, and your awareness throughout the year on creating, becoming, and even healing what's up in your life in any of those ways. That's a limited availability bonus. So if you'd like to get access to the monthly new moon circles, be sure to join Power on or before this coming Saturday, if you're listening in real time, which is December 15th, 2018. The link to check out all the details is wildsoulmovement.com/power2019. So the second bonus is access to 12 guest mentor interviews. And these are amazing. I have handpicked these people. Some of them are former podcast guests. I'll actually give you everyone's name in a second here. Some of them are former podcast guests. Some of them are my personal friends. Some of them are even healers that I work with personally. And so the point here is we have 12 months that will be journeying through power in 2019. And I've specifically placed each guest mentor in the month that will most optimize who they are and what they do relative to what we'll be working on that month in power. So in January, we'll have Rachel Maddox, who is a trauma resolution educator, coach, and one of my closest friends. In February, we'll have Zuyapa Jackson, who's a metaphysical energy healer, spiritual guide, poet, writer, and another dear personal friend of mine. In March, we'll have Elisa Lister, who has been on the podcast before. Lisa's calling this lifetime is to invite women to remember, reconnect with, reclaim, and revere in the fiercely feminine power that lies between their thighs. April, we have Nisha Moodley. I've known Nisha since we were both brand new in our businesses. Actually, in 2019, we were just talking about this. We'll be celebrating 10 years of friendship. So it's been super fun to grow in life and business and friendship with Nisha. Nisha's a women's leadership coach. She's the founder of Global Sisterhood Day, and she is a mother to little Raven, who, if you follow Nisha on social media, you've probably seen Raven in her posts. In May, we'll have Shivani Hawkins, who is a multidisciplinary artist, meditation teacher, and the founder of Living Sanskrit, which is an online school for traditional Indian wisdom and practices. In June, we'll have Laren Alta, another former podcast guest. She is a dear friend and colleague who is a soul guide, shadow diver, and spiritual teacher, known for burning down the stale, fluffy, boring self-help formulas and helping women ignite true personal liberation. In July, we have another dear friend of mine and former podcast guest, Susanna Frioni, who is a speaker, certified deep coaching professional, and embodiment teacher, igniting women through erotic empowerment through her brand, Love, Sex, Desire. In August, we have Heather Lindeman. Heather is a helper, healer, guide, mentor, and one of my closest and dearest friends. September is Barry Tesler, former podcast guest, a financial therapist, mentor, coach, mamapreneur, and the founder of The Art of Money. October, we have Shanda Catrice, another former podcast guest, who is a fiercely compassionate truth teller and visionary who empowers women to find their true north in love and life. In November, we have Evian Whitney. Evian was on the podcast all the way back in the beginning, 2015 style. She is a sex educator, sex activist, and sexuality doula who helps facilitate, educate, and hold space for women and femme-identifying folks who want to step out of sexual shame and into erotic empowerment. And then we wrap up the year with someone very special to me, Raquel Palmies, who is a spiritual teacher, healer, and minister. She helps people clear the emotional and energetic blocks that keep them from discovering their true and unique spiritual connections. Raquel is my personal healer. I've been working with Raquel for most of this year. I will probably work with Raquel forever, as she is amazing. So if you're interested, again, in joining Power and getting those 12 guest mentor interviews, those are available through December 22nd. And enrollment altogether for Power wraps up on December 29th. And again, we start on January 3rd, 2019. So again, you can find information on Power at wildsoulmovement.com/power2019. Now, I want to get into the meat of what we're talking about here today. And what we're talking about here today is the arc of power. And the arc of power is made up of 4 topics that essentially combine to create a healing, growth, and transformational journey and experience as you move through them. I'm breaking the exploration of the arc into 2 episodes, so this week and next week, so I can cover 2 topics in each episode because it would be quite overwhelming to try to squeeze all 4 of them into just one episode. So I want to talk first about the symbolism of the arc. This is actually something I had not named until just recently, and then it just, like a lot of things do for me, dropped right in, the arc of power. The reason for an arc is if you visualize an arc, kind of looks like an upside down U, if you will. It starts low, goes high, and then grounds back down. The topics in the arc go in order. They're surrender and release first, then trust and receptivity, then wild dreaming and desire, and then love and truth. So we begin on the ground level with surrender and release. It's the starting point. Then we raise our awareness, our consciousness. We elevate our practices, mindset, and habits and behaviors as we go through trust and receptivity and wild dreaming and desire. And then we ground it all back down into love and truth. And the point is never to bypass or skip over the real deep stuff in life, but to always ground it back down into love and truth, what is real. Even as things change over time, because change is inevitable. This arc is something that can be repeated over and over throughout life, like a rose with a never-ending stream of petals. And as well, once you've been through the arc once, you can tap back in to any point of the arc whenever you need it. So the topics today that I'm going to walk through with you, that I'm going to go through with you, are surrender and release and trust and receptivity. When I get to trust and receptivity, I have a clip of an interview that I did with former client and Wild Soul Movement alumni Jennifer Arthurton, who's the founder of Old Chicks No Shit. She's been on the podcast as well. You might have heard her episode before. We'll link up to it in the show notes if you haven't. The show notes for this episode will be at untameyourself.com/284. Jennifer also has attended 2 Wild Soul Movement Weekend workshops and completed my teacher training, so she has a wide variety of experiences with the Arc of Power. Specifically, she shared her experience with trust and how that opened her up for absolutely everything else. And so I share that with you, again, to just kind of paint a picture for anyone listening about what's possible, whether you're interested in joining me for Power in 2019, or you're more of a do-it-yourselfer and you want to figure it out on your own. So I came to the Arc of Power in 2013. I wasn't calling it that back then. But when I came to these 4 topics, I was creating Wild Soul Movement, the practice. I created this by doing 2 things. Number 1 was reverse engineering the processes and steps of my own healing, growth, and transformation through some of the most challenging things I had ever experienced at that time. The second thing was studying, training, practicing, and being mentored by some incredible coaches and healers. So like everything I create, there's a good dose of innate wisdom, life experience, and also practical application of proven methods and tools with a major focus on implementation, practice, and integration. And that's the nature in which I offer you these 2 topics today. So you could take them, be with them, feel into them, look into your life and see where you are doing well with them, if you are, and where you could stand to practice or apply them some more. In episode 2 of this series, we talked about deep, committed practice. And we have a free pop-up Facebook group where people have been discussing these episodes. You can join that at wildsoulmovement.com/popupfb if you're not already in there. And one of the questions around deep, committed practice was, where do you need it? And so I know some people were in inquiry around that. And so if you still aren't sure, as we go into a new year, these next 2 episodes, episodes 4 and 5 in this series, as we go through surrender and release, trust and receptivity, wild dreaming and desire, and love and truth, will likely help to illuminate for you where you could use some deep, committed practice. So I'll give you some more specific questions at the end to reflect and help you get clear. I've been giving reflection questions every week. That's another function of that pop-up Facebook group, to come in and discuss them, share with the community. And it's been really beautiful to see as women share and other women are able to get a deeper reflection based on what someone else shared. That's why I'll always do group things, by the way. It's cool to do work on your own, to have your own practices and do your own growth, healing, and transformation, but that is always happening in a vacuum. It's effective to an extent, but often when we have other people to bounce things off of, when we can see what other people are reflecting in, fairly often they'll bring up something that either we're already moving through on our own and we get a different perspective, or something that we literally hadn't even thought of, but totally impacts us, totally works for us, or just helps us to see ourselves more clearly. So let's begin with surrender and release. So if you go to the page, wildsoulmovement.com/power 2019, you'll see there's a whole section that explains what we cover throughout the year. And the year is laid out so that each topic prepares you for the next and gradually builds your lifetime arsenal of tools and practices to repeat any of these processes whenever you need them. It gives you time, space, and many opportunities each month to integrate and implement what you learn. So it's a trauma-informed experience. So each topic we do begins by taking time to address feelings of safety as the foundation before we begin the next topic. It's super important. This is something I learned having run the original iteration of this program for the last 5 years, is that people really need a foundation of safety. So many women coming into my spaces, my circles, my programs, my events, my workshops have had traumas that, they have triggers, they have unhealthy blueprints in their system that will leave them feeling unsafe at certain times. As well, a lot of people who listen to this podcast are sensitive people, empaths, or just deeply feeling people, or highly intuitive people. And when you are moving through the world in a way that you're really picking up on other people's stuff all the time, it's really easy to have your system be overloaded. And so we consider that. We build the foundation, we build the resiliency. And so we begin with surrender and release because surrender is required to embody and work through each of the remaining topics. Surrender is not an easy thing to do, but it is a practice that yields immense space, freedom, and ease. So getting good at surrender is a very worthy pursuit. It will serve absolutely every area of your life, every endeavor of your life, every relationship in your life, including your relationship with yourself. So in order to get good at surrender, you need to be able to release whatever is in the way. So things that we explore in power, which again, you're more than welcome to just take this, run with it, and do it yourself, are how to cultivate feelings of safety around letting go what no longer serves you and breaking your patterns of self-sabotage. And listen, it doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has patterns of self-sabotage. We also, when we look at surrender and release, look at how to release what no longer serves you, but do it with compassion and forgiveness for both yourself and others. And those things are what bring us into the deep magic of surrender. And I use the word magic because there's a level of grace involved in surrender that often does feel like it's otherworldly, or like there's some divine force or universal or assistance or whatever it is assisting you, because it really just, when you can absolutely surrender, when you really need to, it's nothing short of miraculous. And part of that is because in order to surrender, you have to stop trying to control everything and everyone. So let's dive a little bit more into surrender. We start here to create space, and because throughout the rest of the topics, these things serve big time. So some people, when they hear surrender, assume that it means waving the white flag or giving up. That's not what it means. Surrender means getting out of the way, getting out of your own way, being available for a solution or an opportunity or an idea or a relationship or anything beyond what you could have imagined, or more specifically, beyond what you may have been attaching to. So surrender is about not being attached. Surrender is about increasing your capacity to be available for other solutions and resolutions. Surrender is about letting the divine take the lead, to use the term that's in the subtitle, one of my favorite books ever, Outrageous Openness by Tosha Silver. So again, surrender in its simplest form is getting out of the way, getting out of your own way and also getting out of life's way. And by life, take that however you want. That could mean God, the divine. It could mean beings that support you. It could be the universe, whatever it is that you believe in, the divine. So the reason why this is so important is because it impacts us on the deepest of levels. And so in order to surrender, we have to release. And in order to release, it's really helpful. Release is easier if you can bring in the energies and the practices of compassion and forgiveness. Compassion is gentleness with yourself, kindness, giving yourself space and acceptance for being human. Not blaming or shaming or guilting yourself or others, but understanding truly, not in a bypassy way, but we are all here. We're spiritual beings. We're having this human experience, which means that we all have to deal with free will and the implications of our own free will and the people around us. And not just our close people, but like the world at large. For those of you that are interested in unpacking, what systems of oppression are and they look like and how they affect you and all of us, ourselves related to others, others related to us, we have to understand that people are doing their best with what they have. And in a lot of cases, what people have sucks. Sucks. We would hope it could be better. But if it's not yet better, how do we function? How do we function in this culture, in these systems, and not just survive, but be able to thrive? Surrender is a big part of that. Compassion and forgiveness are big parts of that. And those include acceptance. And so for some people, the term forgiveness is also kind of triggering or irritating or just brings up some resistance. Because again, people hear forgiveness and they assume that it's asking you to forgive transgressions that you might not be ready to forgive, whether they're your own or whether they're other people's or life circumstances, right? Sometimes it's a big collective body of something that we can't forgive. Maybe it's the government, maybe it's the police, maybe it's a church or an organization or a school system or, whatever. Forgiveness is never about letting anyone off the hook for something that they should be held accountable for. It's not what it's about. Forgiveness is simply about taking your own energy back, your own power, your own attention, your own focus from the thing that you can't control, from the thing that already happened, right? Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. Some of you have heard me say, I saw that in a frame in a bathroom at the Integratron in Joshua Tree, California many years ago. Giving up all hope of a better past. You can't rewrite what has already been done, but you can certainly shift your energy and how you relate to what's already been done, what's already happened, and how you move forward relating to it. You can let it run you, or you can choose how you are going to interact with it. Again, we're not bypassing, we're not stuffing, we're not pretending things didn't happen, we're not pretending to be okay with anything we're not okay with. We're just going, where's my power? Am I giving it away? Am I taking it back? Is there something that needs to be reclaimed? Is it my energy? Is it my attention? Is it my focus? Am I obsessing over something or someone that I can't do a damn thing about? And if you are, take that energy back. That's what forgiveness does. There's a lot of ways to practice forgiveness. We work on that in power. So this is about focusing on what you can control and what you can't. One of our mantras here is less control, more magic. Again, creating that space. And we're not working at the surface here. We're looking at what impacts us at the deepest levels. You're not mowing a garden, you're weeding it. The difference is there could be weeds in the garden and you can mow them down. You could just trim them, but they're just going to grow right back. When you pull up the weeds by their roots, they cannot grow back. That's what surrender does. That's what release does. That's what forgiveness does. Again, it's releasing energy or attachment to things that interfere with your forward progress, with your momentum, with your healing, your growth, your transformation. There's so many ways to release and so many things to release. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, mindset stuff. habits, patterns, behaviors, people. So once you have space from surrender and release, you can get into trust and receptivity. And again, I'm just giving you the overview here. If this is something that you know you need to do, you know you need to work on, and you need support, Power is an incredible container to do that in. So again, the link for that is wildsoulmovement.com/power2019. And of course, you can do it on your own. What I find anytime I've tried to do something on my own without assistance or a container, it just takes quite a bit longer, which again isn't a bad thing. It's a different route. It's a different path. So trust and receptivity, if you have been listening to this podcast for any length of time, I talk about trust all the time. Maybe you found me on someone else's podcast, and if you did, I was probably talking about trust. Trust is one of my absolute jams. And when we talk about trust anywhere on my show or in my spaces, we're always talking about self-trust, because we know we can't control other people, but we can absolutely resolve our own stuff. And as a woman or woman-identifying person, you're likely wired to be a giver or to think that that's where your value is, in being a giver, a nurturer, a caregiver. And listen, these things can be both wonderful and very unhealthy. Depends on the doses, depends on who and with whom and how. So when we get into self-trust and receptivity, we unpack those things and make sure to activate and strengthen your ability to receive as well. So many women are excellent givers, and I want to make a note here, or think they're excellent givers. Because the truth is, and I learned this from Brené Brown many years ago when I read her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, you might think you're a really generous giver, but if you are not good at receiving, your giving isn't nearly as good as you think it is. Because on a subconscious level, if you can't receive, you're always judging the recipients of your giving. Let that sink in for a minute. You might really pride yourself on how much you do for and give to others. But if you're someone who cannot receive, and let me talk about what receiving looks like. Are you able to ask for help when you need it? When someone offers to help you, are you able to receive it? In the simplest ways, from like someone offering to hold a door for you, or someone offering to take care of your kids, help you out financially, show up for you, take you somewhere, do something for you so you don't have to do it for yourself. And sometimes that's even help that you hire. Other times it's not. It's just people in your life who are wanting to show up for you and support you. Do you let people in? Do you let people do that for you? If you don't, or if you struggle with it, your giving isn't nearly as good and clean and pure or generous or benevolent as you think it is. Because on a subconscious level, if you cannot receive, while you are giving, you are judging whomever or whatever is receiving from you. It was a tough pill for me to swallow when I first heard it, but simultaneously felt very exciting because I wanted to be better at both. And so we focus on receptivity here. We look at how to cultivate feelings of safety around self-trust and how to actually trust yourself, how to open yourself up to be more receptive to all that life has to offer you. This could be love, help, support, opportunities, connection, creativity, prosperity, and more. I have a friend who I also work with who runs very successful businesses. She is a serial entrepreneur. And one of the things that she came to me for was help with receiving, because she grew up in a way where one of her traumas and one of her fears is that the other shoe is always going to drop, or that the rug is going to get swept out from under her. And if you've ever had any kind of trauma, especially a sudden one, or like a tragedy, you know what that feels like. Everything could be going amazing, and then all of a sudden, it's gone, or something's gone, or something happens. Or even if you grew up in an environment that was volatile, maybe emotionally or physically abusive, or if you've ever been in a relationship like that, somewhere in your system now might be attuned to that nothing is ever that good for that long. Something always goes wrong, Or there's like some other like emotional hijack or upheaval is always around the corner. And so to be fully receptive, this is why trust and receptivity go together. We have to cultivate the trust that it's even safe to receive. And to really receive all the way, even if there's a risk that the thing we're receiving might sometime go away. So as I'm saying this, I'm getting a little emotional because this is something I've done a lot of work on myself. And this year was a major turning point for me. Major turning point, specifically in being able to receive love and support from people in all different contexts, in friendships, in romantic relationships. Like even now, some of you, if you follow me on social media, you've seen that I've gotten into stand-up comedy, and a lot of my material is about dating because I've been really doing a lot of dating this year. And some of the men that I'm meeting are an absolute reflection of all of this work that I've done to be more receptive, to be able to receive love. You know, people who like want to take care of me even though I don't need it. Plan dates, surprise me, take me places, do things for me. And again, it's not just about material stuff, but it's about when your energy is attuned to being more receptive, what that is going to magnetize in your life is people who just want to serve you. And again, everything I'm saying is in the healthiest expression of it, right? You're going to inspire that in other people. Because sometimes one of the reasons why we're not receptive is because we have asked for help. We have gone to people in times of need and our needs aren't met. Maybe we've experienced deep neglect. And whether that was neglect, again, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, there's always different categories of it. So maybe we're just so used to having our needs go unmet, we give up. We stop even trying to get them met. Or we think we have to completely rely on ourselves. So again, this interaction, this connection between trust and receptivity and why they go together is trusting that you're worthy, trusting that you're deserving, trusting that you can receive, and really healing the energy of neediness that is not helpful. That's actually more of a repellent than a magnet. Does that make sense? So think about that for a moment. If you're coming from a place, there's a difference between just having needs, we all have needs, and being needy. When we're needy, we're in a deficit. And when we're in a deficit, meaning our needs are so unmet and we've gone so long without having our needs met, that we're now bordering on, if not in desperation. And if we reach the place of desperation, that's when we'll go about getting our needs met in really unhealthy ways. It'll come out sideways, and often it'll be unconscious. We're not doing it on purpose. But this is when we get manipulative. This is when we get passive aggressive. This is when we do things that might not be in our integrity. And I personally have no judgment for that because I've been there in the best, most healthy expression and in the darkest, ugliest, murkiest expressions of all of these things. I have been there. I've done so much of my own healing, growth, and transformation around this and helped so many other people around it. Because I want to tell you, maybe you know what this feels like and maybe you don't. So if you do, think back on how it felt. And if you don't, imagine how it would feel. Imagine how it would feel to have your needs met in a super healthy way, where there's no manipulation. Because if you've ever had to like manipulate or hustle or be dishonest to get a need met, the need gets met, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel whole or wholesome or healthy or pure or clean. And so it's met, but there's guilt or there's resentment or there's shame. And so we're really here diving in around how to embody these things in the cleanest, healthiest, best expression of it. Also that is aligned for you, considering your own values and priorities, which are the things that comprise your integrity. And then as well, we look at how to connect specifically with the energy and divine forces that make trust and receptivity much easier, even in a human experience. So these are so important Self-trust is the balm, BALM, for all things. When you can trust yourself, you can make decisions. You can move through life without FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out, if you're unfamiliar with the term. You can move through life knowing that you cannot miss out on anything that's meant for you. And when you're more receptive, because you've already practiced surrender and release, you're less attached to how you think those things should show up. You're less attached to your needs to be right, and you are more focused on being happy and healthy, feeling joy, even when things are hard, right? My friend Natalie McNeil the other week on Instagram shared a story about, we went on a beach walk. She lives near me a couple months back. And one of the things we were talking about is accessing our joy even during times of great difficulty and challenge, not just for our own personal selves, but for the collective. Sometimes, especially if you're a person with a lot of privilege, or even with any privilege, which we all have some level of privilege, right? Sometimes we might feel guilty because we have access and we have advantages that other people don't have. But if we spend our lives feeling guilty and we squelch our own joy, that's not a way to live. We can't help more people. We can't be of service. We can't use our privilege for good. We can't help heal systems if we're feeling guilty all the time. So this is a real big integration here that we're talking about, which again is why I invite you to join Power to do this integration, to let me help you, since I've walked through all of this and I've embraced and embodied so much of it myself in my own life and helped so many people with it over the years, or to figure it out on your own and to just help you see where and what to focus on and all the intricacy and nuance to what goes into trust and receptivity. One of the other things this helps you do, several other things, you don't have to get caught up in fears. When you trust yourself, when you are receptive, you don't get caught up in fears like failure or rejection because you truly trust that everything is always working out in your favor no matter what, even when disguised as a struggle, challenge, or setback initially. And I'm sure you can relate to this in your life. Everyone has had something difficult happen, which at the time did not seem to have any blessings in it. Only later, you are able to track back and see how many things that were healthy, positive, or beneficial occurred afterwards because of that difficult thing that happened. Those of you who listen to the podcast and have been listeners for a while have heard me talk a lot about my healing after my last romantic relationship, which was very traumatizing for me. I wouldn't trade that relationship for anything. Who I have become since then, the relationships that I have deepened and strengthened in my life because of that experience, people I have met, guests I've been able to connect with on this show, the ripple effect that my having had that experience has had out in our community from people who listen to those episodes and are able to go, oh crap, I'm codependent. I didn't know that. Oh, I've dealt with emotional abuse. Oh, I've been emotionally abusive. Oh, I have narcissistic people in my life. All these things. Oh, I don't have to tolerate this poor treatment. Oh, I don't have to be overly compassionate to the point of self-sacrifice. I get messages week in and week out from people who are listening to things from years ago that I've shared about this. And it's helping them in their own relationships. And so even though I had to go through that trauma and that hellish experience, it was so useful, not only to me, but to everyone I touch, to everyone who listens to the podcast, to people who come into the programs. It was like getting a master's degree in narcissism, gaslighting, codependency, emotional abuse, all these things that previously I wasn't even aware of. Now I can spot them for myself, have much healthier relational experiences, and as well help other people spot them and have better relational experiences as well. So it's always worth it, right? People don't love hearing everything happens for a reason, especially like right up at the beginning of a tragedy or a trauma or something. But later on, when you've had the space, when you've done surrender and release, when you've done some work around trust and receiving, you can go, oh, damn, look at all the amazing things in my life that wouldn't necessarily have been possible if not for that thing. So I want to pop over and share this clip from Jennifer Arthurton talking about trust and her experience and what this does This integrates something we talked about in last week's episode, which was embodiment and the experience of trust. Because trust really is an embodied practice and experience. We can get it mentally. We can know we need to trust. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. You know that you could or should or can trust, but you just can't bring yourself to do it. And that's because it needs to be a deep embodied practice. So I'm going to have you listen to Jennifer's interview here. In Wild Soul Movement, the topic of trust was big for you. And I'm really curious. I know you've done a lot of other work. You read a lot of books. You listen to podcasts. You're no stranger to personal development work. So what I'm really curious about is how the embodiment aspect, the movement practice of Wild Soul Movement really helped you to anchor in the trust.
Okay. It's interesting. So when I started Wild Soul Movement, if you'd asked me if there was a trust issue in there anywhere, I would have said, "Yeah, I'm good. I trust." First time I did that section of it, I actually couldn't even finish it because there were so many tears. I was literally in a ball on the floor, sobbing my eyes out. As much as I intellectually, and I'm a person who lives very much in their head, intellectually couldn't wrap my head around where I was not trusting, my body knew it. And so every time I went into that practice, and especially I noticed when I did it in workshop with other people versus on my own, I would have a physical reaction to it. So the interesting part is I still can't even, I know now that, yes, I had trust issues with myself. Yes, I had, trust issues, let's say, in terms of, my life, in terms of spirituality and things like that. But I can't even quite articulate it for you, what it was like on an intellectual level. So at some point I just trusted and let whatever needed to come up. And so the movement, like I would never have gotten to that place had I not done the movement. And I have to say, I was, as much as I love you and I love the program, I was very resistant to the movement at the beginning, incredibly resistant to the movement at the beginning. But it probably was it was the key to opening up things that I didn't even know existed.
So I hope anything in her experience and in that share there was helpful and useful for you. As we wrap up here, I just want to give you some reflection questions for this week. And I'm going to keep it simple here. I really just want you to reflect on what is your current relationship to surrender, release, trust, and receptivity. And then once you consider what is your current relationship to those things in your life, how I want you to look at and reflect on how they interact in your life. So I talked a lot in this episode about how they interact, how they complement each other, how they build upon each other and kind of weave together. So I'm curious for you. And again, come and share this in the Facebook group if you want to share it, or just do it in your own journal. How do they impact each other, right? Because these things don't exist in isolation. They all impact each other. How are they currently impacting each other in your own life? And so after you do your reflections, you might really feel like you want some support and you want some help. And again, that's what Power 2019 is here for. This is the wheelhouse. This is where the arc of power takes place. We go deep. We do all the healing, the growth, the transforming. We do it together. I love this program and this work so much. This is literally what I was put on the earth to do in this lifetime. This is my sacred work in the world. This is my divine assignment, if you will. And so, again, if you want to join, there's some amazing bonuses going on. And I would be super grateful and honored to have you. So go to wildsoulmovement.com/power2019. And as well, in case you have been on that page but haven't seen it, we also have some partial scholarships available. I don't offer free scholarships to anything anymore, but we do have partial scholarships, which reduces the tuition from $9.99 to $4.44. And there's also payment plans available. So if that would make it more accessible for you, please, by all means, apply for a scholarship. If you feel like you need this work and the investment was what was prohibiting you, apply for a scholarship. There's no judgment. Our scholarships are always by application. I don't publish who received scholarships, because there's no need to infringe upon your dignity. It doesn't matter. I personally have been in periods in my life where I needed financial assistance. And so I have no judgment for that. There's absolutely no shame in that. If you want to do Power 2019 and the partial scholarship is the reason that lets you do it without having to wait till 2020, apply for a freaking scholarship, please. I'll be happy to have you. So thank you all again for listening, as always, for sharing this up, for engaging with anything that I do. It's such an honor to me that, I get to do what I'm here to do, and anyone ever wants to participate in it. And it just happens to be women all over the planet. It's wild. So again, just some helpful links. The show notes from today's episode are at untameyourself.com/284. The details for Power 2019 are at wildsoulmovement.com/power2019. And the free pop-up Facebook group that'll be open through December 29th this year in 2018 can be found by going to wildsoulmovement.com/pop-up-FB, as in pop-up Facebook. All right, we'll be back next week to explore wild dreaming and desire and love and truth. See you later. You were saying something about that tall poppy syndrome. What is that, if anyone listening doesn't know?
So it's really, it's part of the vernacular in Australian society, and I think the United Kingdom. It's really that experience of being too tall, too much, too beautiful, too brilliant, too. And you need to get cut down to size, sugar. You need to get cut down to size. And it's very visceral, and it's, and I have days of things that I want to say about that, because it is so extremely painful to experience it. And I think even more painful is that unconsciously we've contributed to it. So I think about this in the context of, I talk about we canonize people and then we dehumanize people, right? Ooh. So we do this kind of bell curve of, putting people up on a pedestal. And then when they start to zig when we want them to zag, we cut them down, we demonize them. And again, it's pretty unconscious. And I think it's I can feel it in my chest as I say, I think this is one of the biggest reasons people are afraid of success, because they have, ancient recollections of having this happen to them, and they've seen where they've participated in it too.